You open your eyes to gray light and cold air. There's no roof above you, no bed beneath you, no walls between your skin and whatever just moved through the brush a few feet away. For roughly 300,000 years, this is how a human being woke up, exposed, alert, and already counting the hours of daylight left to stay alive. Today, the average person spends around 90% of their life indoors. So let's be honest with each other. If you were dropped into a single Stone Age morning with the exact body and brain you have right now, you would almost certainly not survive until nightfall. Not because you're weak, because you're missing almost everything that ever mattered. Think about what you actually know. You can navigate a city, fill out a form, find a restaurant in a language you don't speak. But could you find clean water in an unfamiliar landscape? Could you tell by looking at a plant whether it would feed you or kill you? Your ancestors could. And the difference between you and them is the difference between life and death before lunch. Start with your body, because that's where the illusion begins. You probably assume early humans were hulking and superhuman. They weren't. In a study published in the journal Nature in 2004, biologists Dennis Bramble and Daniel Lieberman showed that the human body is not built for raw power at all. It's built for endurance, for running long, slow distances in the heat without overheating, springy tendons in your legs, millions of sweat glands to cool you down, a body designed to outlast prey rather than overpower it. This is the foundation of what's called persistence hunting. The idea is simple and brutal. You don't catch the antelope, you follow it, for hours, through midday heat until the animal's body fails before yours does. The anthropologist Louis Liebenberg spent decades documenting this among the San people of the Kalahari in southern Africa. He watched hunters track a single animal across miles of shifting sand, reading scuffs and broken grass stems the way you read a sentence. Now ask yourself a question. Could you do that? Could you look at a faint mark in the dirt and know what animal made it, how long ago, how fast it was moving, and which way it was hurt? Because that wasn't a special talent. That was the baseline. That was Tuesday. This is the first thing that would kill you. Not a predator. Ignorance. The anthropologist Richard Lee made this painfully clear. In 1963, he lived among the Kung San in the Dobe region and carefully measured how they actually fed themselves. The popular image was of starving cavemen scraping by. The reality was the opposite. They knew dozens of edible plants by sight, by season, by soil. The food was there the entire time. You simply have to know which green thing among 100 green things is the one that won't end you. You don't have that library. It took a lifetime to build, and it lived inside human heads, passed from person to person, year after year. Let's reconstruct a single day, then, with you inside it. You wake at dawn because the cold and the light pull you up. There is no other choice. Your group is already stirring. Someone is rekindling the fire from last night's coals because making fire from nothing is slow and precious work, and a living fire is treated like a member of the family. You're hungry, but you don't eat yet. The morning is for moving. The women and older children head out to gather, carrying digging sticks and woven bags, because in most foraging groups, the steady, reliable calories come from plants and small game, not from the dramatic big animal hunts you imagine. Herman Pontzer, who studies human metabolism, spent years measuring the bodies of the Hadza people in Tanzania, one of the last groups on Earth who still live primarily by hunting and gathering. What he found surprised even him. The Hadza walk and dig and climb all day, every day. Their bodies are lean and tireless, and yet they burn roughly the same total energy in a day as a typical office worker in a wealthy country. Read that again. Their bodies don't waste a single drop of fuel. Every calorie has a job. Now picture your body in that group. You would be slow, you would tire quickly. You would not know which roots to dig, how deep, or what they look like under the dirt. You would follow people who have done this since they could walk, and you would still fall behind. By midday, the heat is heavy. This is when the hunters might commit to chasing an animal, the long, suffering pursuit Lieberman described. If they succeed, there's meat. If they don't, there's nothing, and the group eats what was gathered instead. Some days there is plenty. Some days there is very little. You can't store much, you can't refrigerate anything, and tomorrow is never guaranteed. And the whole time, the land is trying to kill you in quieter ways. The anthropologists Kim Hill and Magdalena Hurtado spent years recording the lives of the Ache people of Paraguay, including how people actually died. Snakes, falls, infections from small wounds that turn deadly without antibiotics, childbirth, violence. A scratch you would barely notice today could open a door that doesn't close. So a Stone Age day is not one big dramatic threat. It's 1,000 small ones, every hour, with no hospital, no pharmacy, no second chance, and a body and mind that, in your case, has never trained for any of it. By now you might think the lesson is obvious. You die because the past was hard and you are soft. But here's the part almost everyone gets wrong. It wasn't strength that kept your ancestors alive. It wasn't even knowledge alone. It was each other. A single human alone on the ancient savanna is one of the most fragile creatures imaginable. No claws, no fur, no speed, slow to mature, helpless as an infant for years. By every individual measure, we are a weak animal. What made us the most dangerous species on the planet was never the lone hero. It was the group, the shared mind, the divided labor, the knowledge spread across many heads so that no single death erased it. The anthropologist Polly Weissner studied something beautifully ordinary to prove this. She recorded what the Kung San talked about during the day versus around the fire at night. In daylight, conversation was practical: work, food, complaints. But at night by the fire, it shifted. People told stories. They talked about distant relatives, about people in other groups, about the rules and the bonds that held everyone together. That firelight talk wasn't idle. It was the glue. It was how a fragile, slow, clawless animal stitched itself into something that could survive anything. By becoming a network of minds and relationships, not a collection of individuals. The anthropologist James Sussman, who spent years with the same sand communities, described their world not as a desperate struggle, but as a kind of stability built entirely on sharing and obligation. You gave because one day you would need to receive. Survival was a web, and every strand was another person. So the real reason you wouldn't last a day isn't your muscles. It's that you would arrive alone, with an empty head, into a world that was never designed for individuals, and that has no patience for someone who carries nothing and knows no one. Now turn that around and look at your own life. Because the strange truth is that nothing has actually changed. You still survive on knowledge you don't personally have. You don't grow your food, build your shelter, treat your illnesses, or purify your water. You survive because thousands of strangers, whose names you'll never know, carry the knowledge for you. The tribe didn't disappear. It just got bigger and harder to see. It became the farmer, the engineer, the doctor, the power grid, the supply chain. Your ancestors carried their survival in living minds around a fire. You've handed yours to a vast, invisible network of people and machines. You feel independent. You are anything but. That's why a Stone Age day would break you, not because you're inferior to the humans who lived it, but because they were never truly individuals, and neither are you. You've just forgotten the people you depend on. So picture it one more time. You open your eyes to gray light and cold air. No roof, no bed, no walls. And now you understand the real danger isn't the cold or the predators or the hunger. It's that you came alone. And being alone is the one thing a human being was never built to survive.